Christmas and New Year's Eve is a time for traditions. Perhaps for many, one of the top Christmas traditions was rewatching the first part of Home Alone. Despite being over 30 years old, the film is still synonymous with holiday cheer in cinema. But it is precisely because of its popularity that it is difficult to take a critical look at the film, and in the meantime, it is more complicated than it may seem at first glance. In this video essay, we'll try to get to the bottom of what Home Alone is really about, what's wrong with Kevin McCallister, and why numerous sequels and remakes have failed.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. And a Happy New Year.
It's hard to imagine now, but 50 years ago, teenagers were hardly ever the main characters in films. That changed in the 80s, when filmmakers finally figured out which demographic group went to the cinemas the most and made the box office. So children and teenagers began to appear more and more often in the foreground of pop culture works. John Hughes, director of The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, is widely regarded as the true king of coming-of-age comedies. He also wrote Home Alone, a prime example of 80s teen cinema, albeit released in 1990. Although the film's success is usually attributed to director Chris Columbus, who would later direct the first two parts of Harry Potter, it was Hughes who should be thanked for the script. Hughes' formula for a family film is quite simple: provide a feast of disobedience for both children and adults who feel like children. In this respect, Home Alone is a literal realization of a child's dream of being left unsupervised and, for example, spending the night in a sweet shop. For adults, it's an opportunity to put aside everyday worries for 2 hours, return to the serenity of youth, and have a bit of fun. However, every comedy of growing up is usually also a didactic film with a clear moral. Let the plot of Home Alone and is built on a series of fantastic assumptions. For example, that a child can really be negligently forgotten at home, and the criminals are so ridiculous that they do not notice the trap set by an 8-year-old boy. Such exaggeration allows you to better see the ideological basis of the film. Home Alone only on superficial viewing seems like a light-hearted comedy about a kid who stands up to burglars. Chris Columbus's film is first and foremost a film about the importance of home and family values, as well as taking responsibility for one's actions. The film begins with a major rift between Kevin, who's the youngest son in the family, and his in-laws. And the hero's goal growing up over the course of the film is to keep the house together and thus restore balance. Kevin's evolution is obvious. His desire for everyone to disappear is replaced by his desire for the family to be reunited. One of Hughes' main principles was to treat children as equals. So it's not only Kevin who learns responsibility, but also his mum.
Kevin!
This simple but effective narrative solution is necessary to convey a conciliatory message. Everyone makes mistakes, children and adults alike, and that's okay.
Would you please tell him that instead of presents this year, I just want my family back. No toys, nothing but Peter, Kate, Buzz, Megan, Linny, and Jeff, and my aunt and my cousins. And if he has time, my Uncle Frank. Okay?
Okay.
In that sense, Home Alone is the perfect Christmas film. Every holiday, especially Christmas, is an event that brings people together. Almost all holiday films, from Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life to Henry Selick's The Nightmare Before Christmas, are built on this reconciliatory pathos. In Chris Columbus's films, the American version of Christmas is shown first and foremost, with traditions and habits familiar in the USA, such as the family format of celebration, a live Christmas tree, and Santa Claus.
Can I talk to you for a minute?
Yeah, if you make it quick, Santa's got a little get-together he's late for.
Okay. I know you're not the real Santa Claus.
What makes you say that? Just out of curiosity.
I'm old enough to know how it works.
All right.
It is no coincidence that the main colours in the clothes and decor are red and green, the traditional Christmas colours. In the traditional interpretation of Christmas as a family holiday, the political content of the film is also partly guessed. Home Alone looks like a family version of John Sturgis's The Magnificent Seven, or John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13, which are also built on the trope of defence against bandits. Kevin, who has become the forced owner of the house for a while, has to defend the family home from robbers, defending the inviolability of private property. Private property is one of the most important pillars of American political consciousness, an integral part of the legal order. Kevin is practically a comic book vigilante taking justice into his own hands. So Home Alone can be perceived as a criticism of the state, which is unable to provide citizens with security. Unpleasant bureaucratic hurdles and ineffective police arise time and again on the way of the heroes.
Has the child ingested any poison and/or any other object that has become lodged in his throat?
No, he's just home alone. And I would like somebody to go over to the house and see that he's all right, just to check on him.
You want us to go to your house just to check on him?
Yes!
In this sense, Home Alone turns out to be almost an encyclopedia of republicanism for the very young, which popularly interprets the key ideological concepts: home, private property, family, and state. Kevin's civic maturity even becomes the occasion for jokes in the threequel.
Excuse me for being a good citizen.
An important question that arises when revisiting Home Alone concerns the figure of the antagonist in this film. Who is the villain? The parents who forget their child at home? The burglars who clearly didn't go on a crime spree from a good life? Or Kevin himself, who in the confrontation with bandits shows himself almost a maniac? Kevin's character is determined primarily by the need to create a spectacular plot. But on closer inspection, it seems that he takes pleasure in hurting other people.
You guys give up, or you're thirsty for more?
There is a popular fan theory that Home Alone it's
actually a prequel to the movie Saw. Yep, that's right. Home Alone is a prequel to Saw because Kevin McCallister is actually the true backstory to Jigsaw.
There is even a view that Kevin, being the child of wealthy parents, imagine how much the tickets to Paris alone cost the McCallister family, is simply bullying vulnerable people forced into crime.
Hello.
It seems that Kevin's excessive cruelty is caused by the fact that his family is reluctant to recognise his precocious intelligence and ingenuity, and in order to demonstrate his talents, show his worthiness and get the approval of his family, he goes into direct confrontation with adults in the face of criminals. Kevin's image turned out to be so interesting, not only because of Macaulay Culkin's performance, but also because at the beginning of the film he is shown as a non-ideal child. He gets angry, argues with adults, and generally behaves not very pleasantly. Over the course of the film, Kevin goes through a full-blown hero's journey. He separates from his parents, doubts, overcomes his fears,
Don't get scared now.
and eventually grows up. To emphasise the evolution of the hero, the creators introduce his doppelganger, Marley's neighbour. He too is left alone, and at first he strikes fear. But by the finale, we learn what he is really like. Their conversation in church can be seen as a kind of psychotherapeutic dialogue with himself, or as underscoring the conservative agenda of the painting with a divine figure. Some have confirmed this analogy through the wound on Marley's arm, reminiscent of Christ's wounds.
My point is, you should call your son.
What if he won't talk to me?
At least you'll know. Then you could stop worrying about it. And you won't have to be afraid anymore. I don't care how mad I was, I'd talk to my dad. Especially around the holidays.
Home Alone is an opportunity to see Christmas through the eyes of a child. For this purpose, the creators use warm colour schemes, often resorting to wide-angle optics, elaborate mise-en-scène, and low-angle shots to show the scale of the world for little Kevin. In addition, Columbus emphasises the otherness of the protagonist with a subjective camera. In childhood, everything looks much more significant, and even quite familiar things can be frightening. In places, the creators decide to make Home Alone almost like a horror about a sinister mansion. Even deliberately exaggerated violence seems to have been transferred to the film from cartoons like Looney Tunes or Tom and Jerry, which Kevin must have watched on TV. The sound design in these episodes sounds about the same as the cartoons. It is understandable that in reality, the robbers could not have survived such traumas. However, in Columbus' film, as in the cartoons, they get up as if nothing had happened, and the exaggerated reactions to the misfortune happening to them keeps you from worrying too much about them. When the first part was just launched into production, few believed in the success of a small family film with a very modest budget. It seemed that Home Alone will be at the box office for a couple of weeks and will be successfully forgotten, bringing the studio a small income. But the story ordered otherwise. Forgotten rather his competitors at the box office, Rocky V and Predator II, Home Alone was among the top Christmas films for generations of children. Kevin McCallister's story is probably hard to imagine in an age of social media and total digitalisation. But the film, which reminds how important it is to cherish family and protect one's home, has perhaps not lost its relevance to this day.